When Bruce Catton discovered those lost telegrams in the National Archives in 1962, his hands trembled. After 25 years studying the Civil War, he never imagined he would find something that would completely change his understanding of America's most controversial man, Ulysses S. Grant. Catton always knew Grant had faced difficult moments, but what he discovered in those confidential documents revealed something much deeper. Grant was not only fighting the Confederates, he was fighting his own soul. This is the story Catton took years to fully understand, how Grant's darkest hour became the key to his greatest victory, and how this discovery forever transformed Catton's view of leadership, sacrifice, and redemption. It was an autumn afternoon when Catton found the first clue. He was reviewing military correspondence from 1864 when he came across something that made him stop. A letter from Grant to his wife Julia, dated June 1864, which had never been included in official biographies. Catton immediately realized he was facing something extraordinary. For decades, Grant had been portrayed as an unrelenting general, almost insensitive to casualties. But this letter revealed a tormented man. That was when Catton understood he needed to investigate more deeply. He canceled his planned vacation and plunged into the military archives, searching for more evidence of this vulnerable and human Grant. Over the next 6 months, Catton discovered a disturbing pattern. Between May and July 1864, during the Overland Campaign, Grant had gone through what he himself described as the Valley of the Shadow of Death, not only physical, but spiritual. Catton realized that Grant had faced 3 simultaneous crises that nearly destroyed him: growing political pressure, devastating military losses, and most crucially, a crisis of conscience few historians had understood. Catton never forgot the day he visited Cold Harbor for the first time after his discoveries. It was May 1963, nearly 100 years after the battle that haunted Grant for the rest of his life. Walking through that field, Catton finally grasped the magnitude of the burden Grant carried. In just 10 minutes of combat, Grant had lost over 7,000 men, a slaughter he himself had ordered. But Catton discovered something few knew. Grant did not just regret, he had considered resigning. In private documents Catton found in the Grant family's personal library, there was evidence that the general had written a resignation letter that was never sent. This letter, dated June 15, 1864, was never sent. But Catton realized something had changed Grant at that crucial moment. Something that transformed him from a tormented general into a leader capable of finishing the war. Then Catton made his most impactful discovery. Among Grant's personal papers, he found an intimate diary the general had kept for only 3 weeks, the 3 weeks that changed his life forever. The diary began on June 18, 1864, 3 days after the unsent resignation letter. And the first words made Catton understand he was witnessing Grant's deepest moment of transformation. Catton realized he had found the exact moment of Grant's transformation. It was not a grand epiphany, but a human and painful encounter with the consequences of his decisions. Catton delved into the psychology behind Grant's transformation. He consulted military psychologists, studied cases of leadership under extreme pressure, trying to understand how Grant had overcome his deepest crisis. Catton discovered that Grant had developed what he called leadership through shared suffering. Instead of distancing himself from the pain of his decisions, Grant had chosen to fully embrace it. Catton realized the greatest leaders are not those who feel no pain, but those who transform pain into determination. Catton discovered that Grant developed 3 fundamental principles during his darkest weeks, principles that would become the foundation of all his future decisions. First, total responsibility for every lost life. Grant would never again delegate decisions that could result in unnecessary deaths. Second, direct communication with the soldiers. Grant began visiting the front lines regularly, not to inspect, but to emotionally connect with his men. And third, acceptance of pain as part of duty. Grant understood that trying to avoid emotional suffering was actually increasing the physical suffering of war. Catton realized these principles were not just theories. They immediately reflected in Grant's tactics. His campaigns after June 1864 showed surgical precision that dramatically contrasted with previous battles. One winter night in 1964, exactly 100 years after the events he studied, Catton had his own epiphany about Grant. He was rereading the diaries when something clicked in his mind. Catton realized Grant had not just overcome a personal crisis, he had discovered the secret to authentic leadership. the ability to transform vulnerability into strength. At that moment, Catton understood why Grant had achieved what no Union general had before, not just winning battles, but inspiring unwavering determination in his men. Catton finally understood why the surrender at Appomattox had been so magnanimous. Grant was not celebrating a victory, he was honoring the shared sacrifice of all who had suffered. Then Catton had his deepest revelation. Grant had won the war not despite his humanity, but because of it. His ability to deeply feel the pain of every decision had made him a leader capable of ending the conflict with honor. Years later, when asked about his greatest discovery as a historian, Catton always mentioned those Grant diaries. Not for the historical details they revealed, but for the universal lesson about leadership and humanity. Grant taught that the greatest leaders are not those who never doubt, but those who doubt deeply and still choose to act. His darkest hour was not a weakness, it was the moment he became truly great. This discovery revolutionized not only our understanding of Grant, but our understanding of leadership in times of crisis. It proved that authentic vulnerability can be the source of the most powerful strength. Catton realized that Grant's lesson transcended military history. In any area of life, the most effective leaders are those who transform their internal struggles into compassion and determination. Catton's obsession with that dark period of Grant's life resulted in some of his most powerful writings. He had found not just an untold story, but a leadership manual forged in the fire of war. Bruce Catton spent decades studying heroes and villains of the Civil War, but it was discovering Grant's vulnerability that he found his own mission as a historian, to reveal that greatness does not come from the absence of weakness, but from the courage to be human in the face of the impossible. Catton never forgot the lesson Grant taught him through those lost diaries, that in our darkest moments, when we doubt everything, including ourselves, that is exactly where we find the strength to create our greatest victory.